Hey everybody, this is my 125 gallon tank, and right now we're looking at the far left hand side of it, and you'll notice back there on the glass there's a round bare spot. That is where my former Powerhead was. I keep a 1500 gallon per hour Powerhead in this tank. All my larger tanks, I try to keep a Powerhead in them. I like to have a secondary source of water circulation should anything go wrong with my filter, or as is usually the case, I forget to plug it back in after a water change or something, and we get no circulation in the tank. So it's good to have a backup way to have the water circulation, not to mention the fact that a filter simply can't move the volume of water around in a tank this size that you kind of really need to have a good, clean, healthy tank. So the power heads I use are the Koralia by Hydor, and I'm going to recommend them despite the fact that I'm telling you about one that has stopped functioning. This is the 1500 gallon per hour size, and that's, you know, saying 1500 gallons best case scenario. It's even labeled as a 14 to 1500 gallon per hour power head. So to say 1500 gallons an hour is probably a bit on the high side, but it moves a lot of water, and it does so in a way that doesn't really disturb the tank. It moves it very gently. It's kind of hard to explain. I've seen other power heads that create almost jets of water, and this one doesn't really. It just creates a good current of water. Again, kind of hard to explain what I mean by that. But they run forever. They're virtually silent. If you can kind of see these little lines right there, those are actually little rubber bands, and this mounting bracket is what goes on the inside of the glass right here. And so the unit itself is separated by these rubber sort of vibration dampers, and you can put your hand on the glass on the outside of where this thing is positioned, and you cannot feel it moving. It creates virtually no noise, no vibration. They're just fantastic. I really like them, and I've got at least half a dozen of them of varying sizes in my different tanks down here, and this is the first time I've had a problem with any of them. This is the only one I've ever had that has ever stopped working. And when it first stopped working, I assumed I needed to just clean it out, you know, maybe pull it apart, get some gunk out of it or something like that. But that's not the case. I'm getting nothing. I've plugged it in. I've tried different outlets, you know, in case maybe the outlet had an issue. I get nothing. I get no humming. And of course it's a sealed unit. I can't get into where the actual motor itself is, and it's one of those brushless, you know, there's nothing I could do even if I could get into it. So if I'm not even getting the hum that's indicating that it's trying to get the little impeller to spin, then it's dead. You know, something happened and it's just not working anymore. So that's after years and years of use, and again, this is the only one I've ever had stop working. I buy these things, I plug them in, put them in the, you know, put them in the tank, not necessarily in that order, and you forget about them. Every now and again you've got to sort of scrub the cage on the outside. You know, it'll get sort of gunked up with algae or whatever, and you got to, you know, scrub that with the brush a little bit to allow the water to flow through it. But otherwise you just plug them in and you forget about them. They're really, really good units. So after all that, we're going to go ahead and do the before and after. I know it's not going to be a whole lot different, but you will get to see the water moving around the tank a little more, and you will get to see exactly what I'm talking about with this thing in situ. So hang on a minute, we'll consider this part your before, and there's the after. So that's a big difference in how much stuff is swirling around now, and that gives you a pretty good idea of how much cleaner a tank will stay when you've got a good amount of circulation in the tank. You can see the fish are all behaving much differently now. A lot of these fish are river fish, so they like to be in a tank that's got a lot of current, so they're going to be behaving a lot differently. But more importantly, if you see all of this detritus and all this loam and stuff that's all now swirling around in the tank, that has all been kicked up just by that water circulation. So when it's waterborne like this, it can get sucked up into the filter. When it's not waterborne, you know, when it just falls to the bottom and sits on the rocks and collects in the corners, that's when it just stays in the tank. And it's in the tank either way. I've talked about this before. Just because this stuff's going to go get collected up in the filter doesn't mean it's magically vanished. It's just no longer in our sight. But that's okay. That's kind of what I'm talking about, because this is not particularly attractive. I don't mind some detritus floating around in the water. I find that to be a very natural sort of look. But this is, you know, this looks like a snowstorm going on in there, and that's just because it's days and days worth of collected mulm and fish poop and all the other little bit of stuff that breaks down, little bits of plant and everything else, and it just doesn't go anywhere. There's not enough circulation, even though the filter I'm using is a Sun 304B, which is supposed to move 525 gallons per hour. Even if it moves half that, the problem is it moves it either across the surface or maybe down the back a little bit. It just doesn't move water around the tank enough to really scour out all these little nooks and crannies and all these little corners. And of course the Powerhead doesn't either. You're always going to have dead spots and little places where the water swirls around and creates eddies, and underneath of these little rocks and stuff like that is going to collect mulm. But when you've got poor circulation like I had as of a few minutes ago, it goes nowhere. It just falls to the bottom, and it can just collect anywhere. And then when the fish swim around or they get startled and dart and dash, all of a sudden they've kicked up all this stuff and it's all swirling around the tank, and it just doesn't look good. So for a variety of reasons, I like to keep a secondary circulation source, especially in big tanks like this. This is a 125 gallon tank. It's 6 feet long. So one simple source of water movement, the spray bar, is absolutely no way going to move water around this tank vigorously enough to keep all of this stuff suspended, you know, long enough to get sucked up into the filter. So again, there's a lot of different reasons why you would want to use Powerhead or a secondary circulation source in your larger tanks. So there you go. That was the quick before and after. I'm going to go ahead and get on with the rest of my evening. I got a few other things I want to get done down here, so hopefully I will have time to get some video of them. So make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss that or anything else. Don't forget to check down below. I will put a link to that Powerhead. They come in all sorts of sizes, everything from 240 gallons per hour all the way up. I believe they've got a 2,500 gallon per hour. If not, then the 1,500 gallon per hour, I would imagine, will be the largest size. But I do think they go a little bit bigger than that. I think it's a big double barrel job for large reef tanks where you really want a lot of vigorous circulation in them. So again, check out that link below. They're great Powerheads. I really recommend them. And again, as I said, don't forget to subscribe. That way you won't miss anything else I got coming up. You never know what it's going to be with me. So thanks again for watching this one. Don't forget, this is my 125 gallon tank. I'll see you real soon in the next one.